Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a career. Gain skills in fields like cybersecurity and education. More at tncc.edu.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. It's all about politics on today's Another View Roundtable. Common sense gun control laws. Will Congress finally act? The January 6th Commission is holding public hearings starting tonight. Are you tuning in? Political upheaval in Portsmouth. What is going on with Portsmouth leadership? And how are you dealing with gas prices inching towards $5 a gallon? Dr. Alvean Lyons, Daun Hester, Carol Pretlow, and Gaylene Kanoyton are seated at the table. We'll be right back after this national, regional, and local news from WHRO and NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Lots to talk about with our Another View Roundtable pundits, so let's meet them. Pardon me. She's Virginia's relationship expert, a radio host and podcaster, and she just celebrated her 21st birthday. Right. Dr. Alvean Lyons. How are you?
I am fantastic. You know, I'm always excited when I get to be with my people. You know, you guys are definitely my women. So.
She's the treasurer for the city of Norfolk, Daun Hester. Hey, Daun.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy you guys are here. She's a professor of political science at Norfolk State University, Ms. Carol Pretlow. Hey, Carol.
Hey, glad to be here.
And she's a healthcare outreach specialist, political consultant, and president of the Hampton NAACP, Ms. Gaylene Kanoyton.
Hey,
welcome back.
I'm fired up and ready to talk.
All right, we got a lot of topics to get to. First, I want to play some sound from this week as we had heard from family members and those involved in the mass shootings in Texas and in New York.
Do you feel safe at school? Why not?
Because I don't want it to happen again.
And you think it's going to happen again?
I thank y'all for letting me be here and speak out, but I wish something will change. Not only for our kids, but every single kid in the world, because schools are not safe anymore.
And as her voice, we demand action. We seek a ban on assault rifles and high-capacity magazines. We understand that for some reason, to some people, to people with money, to people who fund political campaigns, that guns are more important than children. So at this moment, we ask for progress. We seek to raise the age to purchase these weapons from 18 to 21 years of age. We seek red flag laws, stronger background checks. We also want to repeal gun manufacturers' liability immunity.
Once the blood is rinsed away from the bodies of our loved ones and scrubbed off the floors of the schools and supermarkets and churches, the carnage from each scene is erased from our collective conscience, and we return again to nostalgia.
To the lawmakers who feel that we do not need stricter gun laws, let me paint a picture for you. My son, Zaire, has a hole in the right side of his neck, 2 on his back, and another on his left leg. Caused by an exploding bullet from an AR-15. As I clean his wounds, I can feel pieces of that bullet in his back. Shrapnel will be left inside of his body for the rest of his life. Now I want you to picture that exact scenario for one of your children.
Those were the voices of family members and victims of mass shootings in Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo, New York. Now, after hearing testimony like this and from others, the House voted last night on a gun control bill that will raise the minimum age for the purchase of most semi-automatic rifles to 21 and ban high-capacity ammunition magazines. The vote was 223 to 204, primarily down party lines, with 5 Republicans joining Democrats and 2 Democrats voting no. The Senate is expected to filibuster the measure. Meanwhile, a bipartisan Senate committee is working on its own gun control bill, but it's not expected to have much teeth. Ladies, what must happen to make gun control a priority in this country? I'm going to start with you, Gaylene, this time.
Well, you know, the Second Amendment has been politicized. Oh. Second Amendment has been politicized, and I think that the red flag laws have to go in place. But, you know, it has to be used correctly, though. You can talk about red flag laws all day long, but it's got to be used correctly. And it's got to be, you know, in Texas, you could be 18 years old, you can buy a gun, but you can't buy alcohol. You know, so, you know, the red flag laws have to be in place with the age, as well as background checks. But also, you know, you have the naysayers that are using mental health. We've been asking for mental health funding forever. Now they're using mental health as the flagship to circumvent the gun laws.
Gun control. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alvean.
Okay, so I know this might sound a little controversial to some, but far be it for me to be mildly controversial, right? I think what we need is an Emmett Till moment. I think that one of the problems.
Explain what that means, so that for people who may not get that connection.
So if I won't go into the whole long history of the Emmett Till case, but basically there was a young boy by the name of Emmett Till. He was roughly, I think, 14 years old. And a white woman maintained that he had said something inappropriate to her. He was pulled from his home by a mob of angry white men. He was beaten, shot in the head, dragged through town, and his body was literally destroyed. His mom made an incredibly powerful decision to do an open casket at his death or at his funeral. The media covered that, and they showed his face and body such that you can see the carnage that hate creates, right? And at that point, we couldn't deny what hate was producing. That's not too different than modern day what happened with George Floyd. We had been arguing about inequities and injustices for years, but for as long as people can't see them, they can pretend they are not real. When you're talking about children whose parents had to use DNA in order to identify them because of the power of these assault rifles and the impact on these little bodies, it is very easy for folks who don't have to see it to just be talking about a machine as an independent, non-thinking, non-active entity. But if you had to see what that did to those babies, and then imagine your own, if you don't have your own children, your nieces, your nephews, your brothers, your sisters, it is much harder to pretend something isn't real when you have to look at it. Right. And I know that there were a couple of parents, there was some journalism that was done by Sean King to say that there were some parents that were honestly considering it. There were 3 parents at the time. I don't know what the final decision has been where that's concerned, but I do believe that at the moment that we have to look at it, we will get a different response. It's no different than Ukraine and Russia. When you're hearing about war, we're desensitized to what that is. But when you're seeing little girls in purple jackets, dead bodies in the middle of the street, and I don't mean to be graphic, but it's a reality. War kills. Guns kill. There is real impact and real loss from these things. When you have to see it, it humanizes a very cerebral conversation that is political and economic in a lot of ways.
Daun, we keep hearing people saying, you know, the polls say that the majority of Americans are against or are for gun control and so forth. But yet those who are for the Second Amendment seem to have all the power. Where are we in terms of why isn't the other side fighting back vigorously to make this change? Or do you think they are?
I think people are fighting. I don't think we're fighting as hard as we should. This is a get down dirty fight. And all people who believe in this need to get down and dirty. And so, I was pleased this morning when I heard on one of the shows that the congresswoman or senator from Wyoming was getting all these phone calls coming in. Constituents, you the voters, you need to call in if you believe it. So if you want your representative to do something, local, state, or federal level, you got to make a call. Doesn't take long. Make the call, say how you feel, leave your name and number, and hang up. Yeah. That's all you have to do. But when an elected official hears from their constituents about whatever the issue might be, they react. They may not react the way you want them to, but it makes them reconsider the stands that they have been taking. And so you are also politically correct, and I'm not. But the Republicans they don't want to do anything. They don't want to do anything. I don't need to generalize. Some Republicans don't want to do anything. Why they're afraid, I don't know. I have never seen such mealy-mouthed people be afraid about something. I'm like, But anyway, the world is different. So I'm going to say that the world is different. But because the world is changing so much and power is it's all about power and who is in control and who's in control of the country. So it goes beyond what we're seeing as mass shootings or even just the day-to-day shootings with people using a handgun. It goes beyond that. Mm-hmm. This fight is about power. I truly believe that, some people don't really care about the handgun stuff going on in communities because that's usually black people killing black people, brown people killing brown people, or domestic stuff. Mm-hmm. So, so it's like, okay, whatever. But I got isms with that too, and maybe we'll get back to it.
And we are going to bring it down to the local level. Mm-hmm. But let me hear from Carol just to get her perspective.
But stood out to me, and it just baffled me, because the Sunday New York Times, and I just scanned it on Sunday, and this morning I said, okay, let's think like a lawyer. Let's look at the distinction between public and private shows up in all of this legislation. So and 18-year-olds, 15-year-olds, they aren't stupid. Instead of going to a gun shop, they go to a private seller. Then some of them cross state lines. Why is it our legislators don't recognize this distinction and make a comprehensive line-by-line adjustment, saying, oh, well, this is public and this is private? That's not going to do it. It really isn't. Mm. And it angers me.
I totally agree with it. And as I said before, it's political. And, the NRA has been a major factor behind this for a long time. They're getting a little dilution. I think they're being diluted behind this. But, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And you have to hear, the constituents have to speak up. But they have to vote, too. Right. I mean, because, you have one issue where they say, well, we're against guns, but then they go and vote for the people who very well support these issues, support Second Amendment.
The moderator for Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, said earlier this week, he said, I don't care how many polls come out saying that the majority of Americans are or for gun control, until I see people getting voted out of office.
That's right.
Then it doesn't matter.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of harkens back, Alvean, to when everybody thought that Hillary was going to win the presidential nomination, when we found out that people were voting very differently
than what they
were saying. I mean, do you think this is the same situation?
Absolutely. Because I think that it's no different than America in general saying we're against racism, but we don't stand up against it when confronted with it, right? I think that people fundamentally, and that's the human factor, we want to have these values that we know we should have. We believe that they're the right things to do and to say, but then we have these feelings that don't match the values we espouse, right? And I say to people all the time, you need to make sure that your feelings line up with the facts, okay? Because if you feel this way, then how is that not represented in your actions? There should be correspondence between your feelings and the facts you espouse as truths, right? But very often there's incongruence between those two things. I say that I hate racism, but I say nothing when I watch it in action. I say that I am anti, injustice, but I don't say anything when I watch injustice happen. I say that I'm against, innocent people dying, but I don't say anything about it.
Actions speak louder.
Exactly. So if you really mean it, then make sure that what you're saying and what you're doing match. And just from the most simple levels, in a relationship, if I say I love you, but I punch you in your face, we have a problem, right? So I should be able to feel the love that you say that you have for me. Well, that is true in all things. We should be able to feel the conviction you have against children being slaughtered in the decisions that you're making in the poll, whether you get on the phone, whether you're organizing, whether you're writing letters, whether you're doing, your own podcast, and social media gives you a platform that no one can stop. So all these things you say you care about, let your actions reflect that thing, because it ministers louder than those words.
Go ahead, Dawn.
I just want to say that if you do the social media thing, say facts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Or if you are sharing your opinion, say, this is my opinion. This is what I try to do here. This is how I feel.
You're not an authority.
When I'm an expert on something, I'm going to let you know that I know what I'm talking about. But then I'm going to let you know when something is my opinion, because it can be different.
Yeah.
Right. But social media is a part of what has gotten us to this point, too. Because I believe social media should be, what's my word? If it's a lie, you shouldn't be able to say it.
Right.
And they shouldn't leave it on social media.
Well, a lot of people may think also, because this happened in Uvalde, Texas, which I guarantee you a majority of people had never even heard of before this mass shooting happened. Buffalo, New York, yes, more known because they got a major football team. But, but let's bring it home. Okay? Let's bring it closer to home. So in Portsmouth, since June 1st, and today is June 9th, there have been more than a dozen shootings in that one city alone. Now, that's not even looking at the entire Hampton Roads. The latest, 3 killed, 1 critically wounded in a rooming house on Maple Avenue in the city. Now, Police Chief Renato Prince says that every resource is being used to address crime, but he's frustrated. Let's take a listen.
I stand here before you asking Portsmouth for your support. This is my city. This is my city. I will not bow down. I will not stop. We will use everything, every resource that we have to find the offenders that are committing these crimes, but we still need your help. This is a us thing. It's not a police thing. It's not a city manager thing. If anybody's telling you that, they're telling you the wrong thing. You need to be involved. Engage. When you engage, we all win. We have a safe community.
Gaylene, I heard a soundbite from you. Once upon a time, we used to talk, neighbors would look out for each other, and we used to tell folks
your
what was
neighbors
going on.
could discipline you, and it was okay. And it was okay. You couldn't do anything wrong. And you always had that neighbor across the street that looked through the curtains that knew everything that was going on and could be able to tell it, wasn't afraid to tell it. That's community, and that's getting back to it. And we can only override it if we unite and combat this together. I mean, I grew up in Detroit, in the heart of Detroit. I know what crime looks like. I've seen people get shot at the end of my street, but I also know my neighbors who came up and shot them too. Was not afraid. And these were like older women. I mean, like 80 years old women up there, whatever. They weren't scared. And as a matter of fact, they would come out and cuss you out. In the house code. We got to get back to that.
Well, I mean, but you hear, Dawn, what Chief Prince is saying. I mean, the police can't just find out what's happening if nobody's talking to them.
So you have to look at, thank you. You have to, okay, there's always 3-4 sides to a story. So first you have the You know that your child has a gun or drugs in the house.
Mm-hmm.
You know that. But yet you don't say anything. But then on the other side, we know that there are people who are afraid to go to court because there's so many guns out here on the street that the family members or others who are sharing information are being threatened. So they scared. So then how do we combat that?
Yeah.
How do you protect the people who want to talk without moving them into another place? And then the people who allow certain things in their home, and it's their children. So are you afraid of your children? If you're afraid of your children, they shouldn't be in your house. I don't know. I'm preaching now.
So we're getting ready to ordain you.
One of the other things, though, that Chief Prince brought up was the fact that there are so many people who have been arrested, Alvean, but then they're back out on the street on bail or for some technicality or whatever. Now, while so do police and prosecutors need to work more closely together in order to make this?
It's funny that you would say that, because that's one of the most contentious relationships that exists. And I'm talking about between police chiefs and prosecutors very often. And I advise a couple of different departments across the state, right? And so I get a chance to hear some of the privileged information. And my goal in accepting that responsibility is that we have got to elevate the standard with which we're serving the community, right? And that's in various levels. How we're choosing our leadership, what we're investing our time in. Community policing really matters, not just in name, but in actuality. Do you get out of your car? Do you know the people of the neighborhoods that you serve? It doesn't matter. I'm not caught up in whether or not it needs to be a black cop in a black neighborhood. That does not matter to me at all. Because you're not going to tell me that as a black cop, you can't serve a white community, right? So I don't have issue with that. What I have issue with is if the only time you are interacting with the residents is when you're dragging someone out of a car or out of a house. That's what I have issue with, right? And when we talk about the fact, just based on the numbers, your police department, your average police department doesn't even represent 1% of the number of people that they serve inside of the community. So you have an 180,000 person community and you've got 400 police officers. So the only way for this to work is it has to be relationship based, because you can't be everywhere. So if you're not investing in coming to know the community, creating trust between yourselves and the community, creating hotlines in which someone can call and offer anonymous tips. Let's make sure when you're showing up at the black churches, you're not showing up just to see if you can spy on somebody. You're showing up at the black churches to know the people in that community that you are patrolling. Because when I see you, Officer Bob, every Sunday or a couple Sundays out of the month, I see you come to the football games. I see you. And a lot of that happens in some of our very good police departments around these areas. And where that is happening, you get the phone calls to say, listen, there were 3 boys that were doing such and such. They're not bad kids, but they're hanging out with the wrong folks. One of them looked like he was carrying something. Let's just keep an eye on him. And it doesn't go sideways. Nobody's going to wrap that little kid up if he didn't do anything wrong. People are just keeping an eye out. And when I know Jamal, when I know Keyshawn, when I know Keisha, I'm not interested in trying to get you into the system. I'm interested in saving your life so that you can become a positive contributor to our community. There's a different way, because I'm here to serve you, which is different than law enforcement in the way that most people think about it, right? I'm here to serve and protect. And that is a partnership. But if it's just about here's the law and my only job is to enforce the law, there's no relationship in that. And nobody wins inside of those scenarios. So what needs to happen in every area, not just unique to Portsmouth, but just based on the numbers, we have got to change the relationship between the community and the police. And really good leaders understand that they've got to change that culture in their department in order for that to be possible.
Yeah. Bingo. Change the culture in the department. Because you can bring in new people, you can bring in new chiefs, but that culture has been there for years and years and years.
And you're swimming against that.
They have a way of pushback doing the way they continue on doing it the way they've been doing it, and they have a way of manipulation within the police department. So that's a war within itself that we have to deal with.
And go
ahead.
I'm sorry, we've had a lot of discussion, since George Floyd about our police departments. And I, want to thank all of our officers who serve.
Absolutely.
I really do. But we also see that all departments are understaffed. So we're working our officers longer hours, harder, and everything. Okay. Wouldn't this be a good time to reimagine a police department? Yeah. So is it more officers that we need? And I'm going to say, yes, we do need some more officers. But people are afraid to be a police officer now.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like they're afraid to be a school teacher.
Absolutely.
Because it's so hard and we don't pay you enough for the risk that you take every day.
Absolutely.
And so why can't this be a good time to rethink, not defund, but rethink? It would be great to have individuals who serve along with officers who are the servants, so to speak, to provide the connection and the relationship building that an officer who, because we do have so much going on, has to do law enforcement, but it's a partnership.
So kind of like when we talk about having mental health experts, for example, go with police
and social workers,
and social workers, so that if it's that kind of an issue,
then
as opposed to a law
enforcement
issue.
Right, and law enforcement can be backup.
Exactly. If you're just joining us, we're talking all things political with the Another View Roundtable. Relationship expert Alvean Lyons, Dr. Alvean Lyons, Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester, NSU Professor of Political Science Carol Pretlow, and political consultant and president of the Hampton NAACP, Gaylene Kanoyton. Listeners, I understand that we are having some issues in terms of our audio. It is a technical problem that the station is aware of, and we're working on it. So we apologize for the in and out. I will tell you, though, that you will be able, if you need to, go back and listen to the entire show on our podcast, which will be posted by 3 o'clock this afternoon at anotherviewradio.org. So we'll keep talking. Hopefully things will smooth out, but we are aware of the issue and wanted to let you know. And yes, you can call in 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Somebody brought up the point, and Carol, I'll come to you on this, about or actually, Dawn, let me come to you first. You brought up before about the black on black crime and how it may be an excuse for people not to do anything about gun control. Some elected officials, because it is black people killing black people, so therefore it's not an issue.
Well, it's not an issue for them. Okay, so as our relationship expert always lets us know, things are personal and relational.
Absolutely.
And so it isn't happening in their neighborhood, and so they aren't having the same fear of living in their neighborhoods or fear of getting out of their car and taking in their groceries or what have you. And so I do think that way, that sometimes it doesn't elevate, because in the power structure and the political world and the divisive country that we're living in, what we primarily see is individuals feeling that people of color are taking over and they're going to be more of us. And so, okay, so let them just go ahead and shoot themselves up. It's okay. I just feel that way. I don't have any data, and I'm not.
That's your personal opinion.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to clarify that.
Right. But you know what?
I have lived 66 years, and so I've seen enough and been elected enough to know how kind of people think. And so, if it doesn't impact me.
And I can hear some of my listeners now, because they come at me all the time with the you back it up by fact, and you need to tell fact. But if you want to know what the black community is talking about, folks listening, this is what we're talking about. Exactly what you said. Whether we have, whether we can quote it statistically or not, the reality is that's the reality of the community that is facing right now. And we're trying to figure out what to do about it.
Even down in Uvalde with our brown babies.
Absolutely.
And then you have their senators and their elected officials talking about what the NBA is saying and what everybody else is saying. You have got babies and families who have just been devastated.
Do you think that this is kind of synonymous with when opioids became a health issue versus a criminal issue? Is this whole gun control and this whole getting this violence under control will it become an issue once it starts affecting the other communities as it is affecting ours?
I'm sorry, y'all. I'm talking a whole lot today.
That's
I don't
okay.
know why.
Go ahead.
But anyway,
expert on it.
I don't want it to affect their community because I don't want them to feel the pain that we're feeling. Well, it is hard.
Let me jump in for just a second.
Go ahead,
Let's be honest about something. Sandy Hook was their community. Columbine was their community.
Good point.
And no legislation got passed because what we established then is profit is more important than people.
That's right.
We will choose guns over little girls. So I don't want us to pretend that it hasn't touched their community because it has. And still nothing got done. And that, quite frankly, is the reason most people don't believe anything was ever going to get done. Because if little Becca and little Tristan and little Susan and little Cody can get shot down in their elementary school and you did nothing, you are definitely not going to do anything about Keyshawn and Shonda and Michelle and Fernando. And you're not going to do anything. And that was the honest perception about it. I am hopeful, given the response that we are at least starting to see around Uvalde, that just maybe the human factor, human consciousness, genuine love and care for others may just elevate enough for us to move the needle slightly. And race and economics will not be our excuse to not do something.
But should we accept just the and Carol, I'll come to you on this. If the Senate has its own bipartisan group, but what they're working on is so narrow, and the impact will be minuscule.
That's what I was about to say, because when you read this article, and I've checked off private versus public, it shouldn't be private versus public. It should be, this is a law. It applies to, I don't care if you're an individual with $50 million or one with $5. It applies equally to everybody. But when you go and jerry pick the distinction between private and public, you're asking for people to be shot.
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Ray joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Ray. You're on the air.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I wouldn't belong to either dysfunctional party, so I'm sort of in the middle. I lean a little right, and I'm for restricting some gun restrictions and stuff like that. But to talk about the NRA and the Second Amendment not getting us anywhere, I think what Americans do, they kind of treat these things like taking pills. You get rid of the symptoms, but the problem still remains. You can take a lot of guns off the street, but the problem's still there. And I think there are 3 points I kind of want to make if you got time.
Sure.
One is with a book that I just heard an author talk about and read part of, called The Boy Crisis, how boys have kind of been ignored in the last 20, 30 years while they were kind of upgrading the status of women, which is not bad, but the boys have sort of been put in the background. And the second point is that, you got two parents working now. So they're out of the home and the kids sort of have a way with what they want to do, and they're not getting much guidance. And the number 3 point is our Great Society programs, which done a lot of good, but anything you do something good, something bad may come of it. And we've encouraged one-parent families in a lot of situations, which putting a lot of kids on the street. And I had 12 years of experience talking to parents that had problems with their kids, and they pointed directly to this. So I just wanted to make that comment, see what your panel has to say, and I appreciate you taking my call.
Okay, thanks, Ray, for the call. We appreciate it.
Well,
Alvean.
I think that Ray made some very interesting points, valid in different kinds of ways, right? So the boy crisis, I think, is legitimate in the sense that we can't unpack the whole thing right this second, but we have ignored the mental and emotional health of boys for a very long time. I mean, and quite frankly, we're socialized to ignore it. You know, big boys don't cry, you know, like boys don't cry. I mean, like we do all this stuff, be tough, don't show your emotions, all of those things. And so in psychology, and we've actually talked about this on a previous show, but very often depression and anger in men are misdiagnosed, right? So you will misdiagnose anger management issues as anger management when in fact it's depression. But for men, it is not socially acceptable to be weak. So they show their hurt through anger. So it's flipped on its head. Anger is just pain. That's why they say that riots are the voice of the unheard. It's just pain being lived out, right? So the question is always, if we get to the root of that, where is that pain or that trauma coming from that you're acting out? So the boy crisis is absolutely legitimate. The two working parents. Now, let's be honest. The fact is, if you leave children to their own devices, nothing good is ever going to come from that, okay? Like, it's just a reality. You could have two parents at home, and if you ignore your kid, it doesn't matter that both of you are together, but you're not paying attention to your children. And for all of the parents that are allowing social media and electronic devices and television to raise your babies, you're going to have the same problem, whether there are 2 or 4 of you in that house. You could be polyamorous for all I care. The reality is that ignored children. When we were kids, we would hear our parents say, the idle mind is a devil's workshop. You ignore a kid, you're going to get ugly things. So there's real consequences that come to that. And then the last one was sort of kind of partnered to, the second one around us encouraging single parent situations. I don't know America's encouraging it. I think that much like the pandemic, we're learning to live with it, but I don't know that it's necessarily encouragement per se. But one of the realities that is happening when you've got all these multiple crises, eligible men not being available, changes in the way that we socially view the roles of men and women in America, educated women who no longer have to wait around for some guy to rescue them anymore. If I decide I want to have a baby, I'm going to have a baby because I make 6 figures and I can afford the baby that I'm getting ready to have. Whatever the situation may be, we are not in the America that was dependent on men because women weren't independent anymore, and that changes the landscape. The goal is not single parenting, but with the goal for women was personal empowerment in such a way that I can own my life in a way that we couldn't when we were uneducated, couldn't vote, couldn't work, and, barefoot and pregnant.
Gaylene, I want to bring this one to you. It's a guy called, his name is Jay from Chesapeake. He said he was too angry to be on the air, but his thought was that the criminals are no longer afraid of the law, that there is a culture of no respect just to outdo each other.
There's no respect for life. And that is heart-wrenching. And I think that I live in Buckrow. And a Sunday of Memorial Day had 100 kids come out and jump on the top of cars. On the top of cars. And people were in some of the cars. And just out the blue. And so we had police officers that came out there. There were some arrests or whatever. I think it needs to be training more with police officers. I think since the George Floyd and everything else, it's a culture shift too within the police department of afraid, what should I do? What should I not do? And this, that, and the other. And there's a gap there. And so when we talk about punishment, I was talking to someone else just yesterday. They said the kids are not being punished. They're not being picked up the way they should be picked up, because it's that fine line. And if you think about everything that's happened, between police brutality, well, you got criminality and you got police brutality. But there is a medium on how you handle both of that. And I think retraining has to happen with our police departments.
So go back to these 100 kids for a minute. So literally, they're just a gang of kids.
My neighbor next door is moving. He got his for sale sign up. But I was away. But when I came back, all my neighbors told me about it. But they just came out and just out the blue. And
were they kids from your neighborhood, from Buck Grove?
No, they weren't from Buck Grove. They weren't. They come out. But I mean, you look at the Paradise Ocean Club. They had a shooting just out there, and they had like 10 fights break out right there inside the club. And when the police came, they saw that the fights, and they were addressing the fights. Then they had no idea that this girl had got shot in the arm, and that's really what kind of kicked the whole thing off. It's like no respect for life or no respect for each other. And so I had this conversation with Derek Martin with iHeartRadio, and I said, look, we really need to think about having some kind of campaign on 103 Jams. I said, people need to hear this subliminally over and over again about respect for life. We got to come up with some kind of campaign. There's not one, excuse what I say, silver bullet, but we got to try every which way but loose, that we can try to solve this. But it really ultimately comes to the community coming together, parents knowing what their children are doing and being present with their children.
And not just children, young adults too.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what I meant. Yeah,
I get upset with the young fellas mainly, but there's some sisters in there too, riding those little dirt bikes and those 3-4 wheelers in the street like they're supposed to. I mean, they go cross town.
It's just so interesting because when I'm driving, and I grew up in Baltimore where everybody blew your horn. And like if you're sitting at the light and you take too long, somebody's gonna blow the horn and wake you up, right? And I find myself being hesitant. If I know somebody's looking at their phone and they're just not paying attention, the light turned green 30 seconds ago, right? But you're hesitant about doing anything with strangers these days. I mean, it's like the world is upside down, Alvean.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that the pandemic has only exacerbated that, because while we were all having to do, at least those of us who were conscious, were all trying to ensure that we were not increasing the spread. The isolation inside of that has a way of taking something that was already cracked and moving it to full-blown brokenness, right? So if you were already on the edge, whatever that edge was for you, being alone for so long, being disconnected for so long, the lack of connection one with another. We were talking about how good it was for us to be inside of the studio together. Because being behind a screen makes it very easy to feel disconnected. It's part of the reason why we have so much abuse on social media, and we have these little Twitter thugs and folks who have all kinds of digital courage to be completely obscene and obnoxious to you because they don't have to look you in your face, that would not take place if we were sitting in the same room together.
So who is responsible? Gaylene, you're the president of NAACP. The churches are out there. I mean, who is going to bring our community together to start caring about life again? As you said, Carol, we haven't heard from you in a minute.
Carol, go ahead. This is a hard one because I used to think that it was the schools, it was the teachers and the people who were seeing not only the problems but learning difficulties, because a lot of times when people have learning difficulties, first grade, second grade, third grade, they act out. It's not the situation itself. They're acting out because they are embarrassed or frustrated. So teachers and community leaders and people who could get together. But now I'm seeing a disrespect for teachers like we saw with the situation in Texas. College-wise, I confront things in a classroom and people say things to me that take my breath away, and I have been trained to kind of nod, and I've been teased about my sarcasm because I use that a lot. But the reality is I use sarcasm when it hurts, but back in the day, sarcasm worked because people knew what you were talking about. Nowadays, you use sarcasm with those kids. They don't even have a clue that you're being sarcastic.
Right.
And so you're constantly faced with these problems. You think, okay, when they get out of high school, they'll get in college, and then they'll see, and they'll be encouraged, and they'll be motivated by the job opportunities. It's not happening.
But let's take it another step further. Our children are watching. They're watching what's happening on a national level. They've been watching for a while. They know that a lie can become a truth if you say it over and over again, and you can get away with it. They saw the insurrection on January the 6th. They're watching. So this thing is filtering down. It filters from top to bottom and bottom to up. And so our children are watching, and we always have to remember that. And the dynamics and the climate of everything, politics has changed.
Yeah,
there's no respect on that level, on a political level. And we expect them to have respect on a grassroots level with our kids. They have respect. Our kids are looking at these politicians and saying they don't even respect each other.
Well, so can I just jump on that just very quickly? There's so much truth to that in so many different ways, because even when I'm talking about, the mass exodus from the Christian church, why is that happening, right? You grew up in church. Your parents took you to church every weekend. And my answer is very simple, because they saw what you were like when you were at home. It doesn't matter what you're like on Sunday. I see what you're like Monday through Saturday when the pastor isn't around. So when you're talking about how come I'm not a Christian as an adult when I get to choose for myself, or how come I'm not this or that, whatever that faith is, half of that is because what I saw modeled when nobody else was looking didn't make that faith look particularly exciting at all. So when we're talking about what's happening around, the devolving rather than evolving of our society, what kids are watching happening at the adult level, I don't trust the grown-ups.
That's right.
So why would I change the way that I'm operating when, if this is what adulting looks like, I'll make my own roadmap. And in making that roadmap, we are seeing a disaster. When we operated as a different society, when being an adult meant personal accountability and ethics and morality and hard work, and it doesn't mean they were perfect. It just means folks were at least ashamed to be terrible. Okay. Now nobody's ashamed to be terrible. Now we're becoming famous for being terrible now. So the more controversial, the more crude, the more obnoxious, the more inappropriate you are, the more followers you have.
Cancel
so we
culture.
are rewarding what it is we're trying to get rid of, and then don't understand why it keeps growing. Well, you need to cut off, just like cancer, you need to cut the blood supply off to the things that you don't want to see grow. And right now, as we continue to give more record deals to folks that are inciting and encouraging violence, while we continue to give more movie deals to folks that are promoting all kinds of ungodly behavior, while we continue to give political opportunity to folks who are destroying the fabric of our nation, while we continue to allow pastors who are sleeping with congregation members to be able to have mega churches, if we go down the list, stop rewarding bad behavior, and we'll stop getting so much of it.
Dawn.
Amen. I'm just agreeing to all of that and more. But I thank you so very much.
Yes.
You have to get to, it goes back to what Gaylene was talking about. You have to get to know the people in your neighborhood and outside of your neighborhood. And I have said this throughout my career. Get a family that's outside of your neighborhood and mentor and help them to grow.
Amen.
And to see good and to learn how to get there and to learn how to get the job, to get the training and help me through it. A young person, I was talking to some Norfolk State students last Tuesday night, and they asked, how are we going to make a difference? And I said, well, if we want to do a program, because we got plenty of programs, but program can't last for a year when you're trying to change somebody's life. A program has to last for 7 to 10 years. And somebody is in somebody's life, the family, the children, the mama, the daddy, everybody, to help them get to a stable point. So there's no need to do a program for a year and it's over and gone, or the elected people don't fund it anymore.
Absolutely.
And it's gone. and you haven't made a difference.
Yeah.
It takes time to make a difference in someone's life, so it's possible.
And those of us who want to make change have to have the courage to step out and make that change. You know, because we talk about all these programs and so forth, but if people are just going to sit in their own homes and do nothing.
Absolutely. You've got to be willing to get your hands dirty. You know, some of you know that I have 2 belly babies, as in 2 children I gave birth to, but I've raised 3 other children. One I is adopted, so that's my daughter. And then I have 2 other children that I have helped raise who came from homes with drugs and all kinds of crazy stuff that was going on. And while we never legally adopted them, we were the place where they could come and have safety and learn values and principles. And I am not calling us perfect people, but I do believe that every child deserves to have good parents in their lives. Yeah. And it doesn't...
Whether it's their biological
child or not. Because for as long as it's their problem, it's only a matter of time before their problem's going to be creeping in your window. Yeah. So we cannot operate from this orientation that we're an island onto ourselves. You know, the beautiful thing about, truly African culture is the idea of connectiveness, right? The village concept. Well, that doesn't have to be a black thing, a brown thing, an African thing in that kind of way. But to be able to, extract the value out of that, to recognize that we are stronger together than we're ever going to be apart. And a westernized orientation that says, as long as I made it, you figure it out, the individualism is always going to destroy us. We've got to see, and from a Christian perspective, you are your brother's keeper. We've got to see us as an us and not a them versus.
We got 3 minutes left. Do y'all believe this hour is gone? We didn't even get to some of the topics. Okay, so in the last 3 minutes or less than, what are you expecting from tonight's hearings? We start the January 6th insurrection. For me, I think about watching it in real time. And the fact that we had to put together a committee to take a year to talk about what we all saw in real time is surreal to me. But be that as it may, what do you expect tonight, Alvean?
I'll tell you what I hope. I'm hoping that folks won't rewrite history. That's what I'm hoping. Because we have gotten so good at deciding what we want people to believe. Don't believe your lying eyes or your untrustworthy ears about, as you reference, what we witnessed in live time. Do not rewrite the story. Let's just deal with it. And like I said, if we're going to kill the cancer, we have to stop the blood supply. Stop letting folks get away with things that are destructive to our nation.
Okay, that's Dr. Alvean Lyons. Daun, real quick.
I just want to see the facts, and I want people arrested.
And that is City Treasurer Daun Hester. Carol.
I'm like Daun. Let's see the facts. Let's weigh them out. Once the committees act, it'll go to the Judiciary Committee, and it'll be in their hands.
And as you, Professor of Political Science, Carol Pretlow and Gaylene?
I want to see the truth. And in the words of Gil Scott-Heron, the revolution was televised.
That is Gaylene Kanoyton. She is a political consultant and president of the Hampton NAACP. You ladies, I love talking to you all every month. Thank you so much for this conversation. Audience, don't forget that if you had trouble listening to us today, you can listen to the podcast. It will be posted by 3 o'clock this afternoon, and you can find it at anotherviewradio.org. And while you're there, also sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows, so you know what to expect every Thursday at noon. And you can find us on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. So next week on Another View, Coach Robert Swain. Now, he is a coach. He was a basketball star who one life incident made him go down the wrong path. However, he talks about overcoming obstacles, and owning your moment. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Do me a favor this week and practice patience. It will make our world a much better place. Join us again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a bachelor's degree since tuition is 1/3 the cost of four-year schools. More at tncc.edu.